There we are.
Hello, hello. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing good.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining me. It's so great to meet you. And I just want to tell you up front, um, there might be some background noise, and that is because I am about to play a live gig in front of people, which is unbelievable. 100 people. Can you believe that?
That's fabulous. I hope
Yeah,
I hope you're
very,
gonna make a scratch.
very. Yeah, we'll get there. Very exciting. But I want to ask you right off the bat, are you looking forward to getting back out on the road yourself and touring?
At this point, I'm probably not going to do too much touring with the band. I'm going to do select dates.
Right.
Uh, Probably, the city wineries in Nashville, New York, and Chicago. I'm booking that right
Excellent.
now because
Right.
I have 15 people I have to drag with me.
Uh-huh. How many did you say, sorry?
14.
14. That's a lot of airfares. Wow.
Percussionist, drummer, singer, keyboard player, rapper, three pedal steel, guitar, and guitar. It just goes on and on.
I love it. And this is all linked with your new release coming out in August, right? Rarified
Yeah.
World.
Which has 16 musicians on it. It was recorded in 8 days,
Mm-hmm.
which gives you an idea how good those musicians are, really.
Sure. Yeah. For production like that. Wow.
Yeah, with no rehearsals because of the pandemic.
Uh-huh. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just make sure I've got the date right. Is it August 31st?
August 31st is when the record comes out. Yeah.
Yep. Immediate Family Records. And what's your relationship like with that record label? How did that come about?
Well, it came about because I'm in a band called the Chi-Town Social Club with a bass
Mm-hmm.
player Jones, who's with the Rolling Stones, and
Yeah.
Miles Miles Davis's nephew, who was the drummer on The Man with the Horn,
Mm-hmm.
and he's
Mm-hmm.
also to the Miles Davis estate. A singer who I've known forever named Sean Christopher,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was the core members of that group, and we hired Immediate Fam to do 1 month of publicity to check them out.
Right.
In the process, um, I became um, really good friends with Chris, and I just like his style because
Mm-hmm.
we talk once a week. We don't talk for a long time,
Right.
and he gets it done.
Yep.
That part of me is I don't like talking that much. It,
Sure.
it moves quick, so that's the good thing.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I mean, I imagine that's so important to you, considering some of the other things I was reading about your relationships with labels in the past.
Yeah,
Uh, so, I mean, I don't want to dig into that history too much because I want to talk about the new album, but I thought it was really amazing with your first, I think it was your first two albums, and then your departure from that label and the project that you came out with right after that. Is it the 52 Reasons project?
yeah. Previous to that, I started working with a poet named Gregory Corso, who was
Hmm.
one of the lead poets and made that record. And yeah, probably before it was such a great idea to do it, but the internet seemed so limitless that I decided to write a song a week for 52 weeks, and people
Right.
subscribed to it, and they just kept getting song after song after song. So, my thing is just always trying to do something that first off scares me a little bit.
Sure.
The same
Yeah.
way like we like mystery.
Hmm.
I great musicians and people that have listened to a lot of music and studied it like not feeling the ground under our feet completely.
Hmm.
We like it's there, but we like having a little slipperiness going on. So
Yeah.
52 Reasons was interesting because it turned me into a crazy person.
I love it.
Who, I would dream songs and wake up thinking of songs every
Hmm.
week. Plus, I was producing and arranging them as we went. So
Yep.
what sounded like a great idea became a little bit crazy.
Right.
But,
But
you know,
I just caught my attention because I think it seems like that was ahead of its time because people might be doing that now. But back then, that was like a subscriber model where everyone at the end of the year they got 52 of your compositions
yeah,
for paying the $35. It seems
I
very cool.
found a guy named Will Cruxton who was trying to do a digital label before anyone else had, and he went
Hmm.
for it. But it was constant logistics.
Yep.
Try to figure out how we're going to do this
Sure.
and keep the database going,
Hmm.
it was back. I don't know if you remember, but back in the day, it was backbreaking. Just to get a drive was backbreaking.
Okay.
Everything else. So we're just constantly trying to figure a way to add one more song without the world. You know?
How
But
funny. All right, so that's fascinating, but I want to jump forward maybe 30, 40 years, but to this current album. And I want to ask you about two of the tracks, because I was lucky enough, I got to listen to the whole album before everyone else has, and I loved it. But I think it's one of the key tracks, or the feature tracks, J. Paul Getty. First of all, I listened to it and I couldn't stop laughing at first, because I was like, what's going on? And then I listened to it for another, like 10 times after that, because it just feels so good. It's so good.
yeah.
It's so rocking. But how did you come up with that? What's the story behind it?
Well, it's funny because there's a band called 11th Dream Day in Chicago, and I play with a guy named Rick Rizzo, and we did a lot of writing together for a band called Candy Gold, which was, for lack of a better word, a very garagey sounding rock band. But it was a lot of fun. Bunny Carlos on drums from Cheap Trick, and the bass from Wilco was in the band. And one day that just started going in my head. You know, it's like J. Paul. Can I swear? So
Sure.
Yeah. I had J. Paul Getty, and plus my son was turning me on to Notorious Big at the time, and I was listening to his cadences, which are just amazing. And I thought, this guy's like a great jazz drummer, the way he does it. And all of a sudden it just came. It's like J. Paul Getty. And part of it was the fact that in my childhood, I'm an old man, but in my early childhood, J. Paul Getty's son was kidnapped.
Right.
And they asked for $5 million. And he said no. The grandpa said no.
Right.
And they sent him the kid's ear. They cut it off. And then he still said no. And about 3 years later, they got $300,000 out of him. And I think the kid came home and commits suicide. And it really affected me as a kid, thinking, what greed is.
Sure.
It was the first time I'd ever seen what greed is. So it's like J. Paul Getty, motherfuckers with machete. Reflected on Carson Culler's book about a general who has a promiscuous wife who rides a horse, and to punish her, and the fact that he is homosexually in love with this stable hand, to punish himself and her, he beats this horse within an inch of his life. And that was like the whole macho thing. So Reflections in a Golden Eye in the Land of Lies, which is the country that we live in.
Amazing.
But it just all came together like this wham, wham. And I said it to my friend in the car, and he goes, yeah, that's crazy. What are you going to do with that? And I said, I have no idea. And a year later, I started writing that song, you know?
It sure is crazy, but it's so great. It's like a sort of, I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, I did listen to it 10 times in a row. So that's that. If it makes you keep going back to listen over and over again, that's a really good sign by my metrics. Anyway, I love it.
I think that people want to hear people sing the word motherfucker.
Well, that's exciting. But the groove and the whole thing, it just feels so great. I love it. It's sensational.
Thinking it's a very Chicago groove. The first rock star I ever met, my cousin was a great guitar player and a session player in Chicago. My cousin Dino. And the first session I ever went to with him was in 1973, and it was for this female singer that was doing demos at her Tom recording studios, and I met Curtis Mayfield.
Oh, right.
Awesome. So, which leads me to tell you that I'm the only 13-year-old band that played Smoke on the Water and Fred Dead. But that was a lot of it. And I fell madly in love with Curtis's band and Matt Gibson on percussion. And I think that song is a real Chicago soul song. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yes, I do. And I wanted to ask you, you are the official music mayor of Chicago. I mean, how did that come about? How did you earn that title?
Norm Weiner, who is the president of CBS Rock Records, and more importantly, there's a radio station called XRT, was quoted as saying it, and it kind of stuck, because I was doing these these things called the waltzes, where I'd bring in a bunch of people. It was very much like the last
Yeah.
waltz band,
Mm-hmm.
but I was giving all the money to Neon Street for Homeless Youth, which
Sure.
help children. So one time they asked him, "What do you think of Nick?" And that's what he said, and it went in the newspaper, and then it kind, you know how those things stick.
I love it. I'm jealous. I want a title like that. I think that's my life goal.
Albert Collins, when I came off stage once jamming, said to me, "You all right?" And he said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Nick." And he goes, "Nicholas?" And I go, "Yeah, Nicholas Tremulis." He goes, "That's Greek, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "How about we call you Blind Lemon Chicken?" So now a few people heard this and laughed, and I laughed. But every blues club I went in for the next 3 months, ladies and gentlemen, we have a celebrity who's just walked in the club, Mr. Blind Lemon Chicken. Maybe we can get him.
Love it.
You know.
That's great. I need more names. It's funny.
Yeah.
But the other thing I noticed, you talked about Chicago with the groove and the feel, and I know this is a little bit. I spend a lot of time talking to musicians about their time feel. You spent some time in New Orleans as well.
Oh yeah.
And you were mentioning the difference in time feel, and people telling you you're too far behind the beat in Chicago. Then you went to New Orleans, and then it's like no.
Further.
Yeah. So I mean, what's the difference between scenes there? Tell us a little bit about that.
That scene is so far behind, and it's you know, maybe because it's such a harbor town, it's so fluid when you play.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing with George Porter on a song,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just doing kind of revolving kind of riff, you know, and it took 4 takes because my eyes got closed, and it was like being hypnotized,
Right.
you know. So when you play with those guys, it's a lot like that. Ivan Neville, previous to that, I'd made he had played on my whole record, and we became best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got married, I went to New Orleans because my wife's Cajun, and I said, "Go there because it's you know, if you know who Buddy Bolden was and you know all these people, you want to get your ass to New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what it is." And frankly, my nursery rhymes were Bebop and all those guys, in my trail back to things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But,
interesting you say that. Where so when you're 2.5 years old, your dad takes you to see Thelonious Monk.
Yeah.
Now that's got to have. I mean, that's pretty early for a jazz concert, but that must have had some impact. I think it did.
From what my parents had told me was that I ran to the front of the stage. It was an outdoor festival at a place called Ravinia,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a big band. It was that during that sort of, you know, it was kind of like a relaunch of the town hall kind of thing.
Right.
That came out in around 62. I don't know. But yeah, I just saw him spinning and went, "Oh, I get it." I ran to the front of the stage. I broke away from my folks and started spinning, you know. Yeah, that was it. There's a place called the Jazz Showcase. You might have come through here.
Absolutely.
But I met Joe Siegel when I was 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
My dad probably took me to see more Art Blakey shows because he knew it would excite me. And plus, they ended at 11 o'clock at night. But from 7 years of age, every time Blakey came to town, I saw him.
Okay.
And
amazing.
that's really important to me. The other thing was him just teaching me, because as a really young kid, just constantly hearing Charlie Parker and things like that. I don't know if you could remember, if you were really young when you heard it, when it sounded completely confusing to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like going around. So he would teach me standards so that I could sing the standard and start to learn that, you know. And that just became part of my vocabulary. It wasn't where I wound up. I started with music because my father and I, you know, it's the same thing. I wanted to find my own music is the best way to put it.
Sure.
Plus, growing up with the Beatles makes you a certain kind of person.
Yep, absolutely. So in terms of defining your own music, I mean, you've got so many different influences. It's not any one thing, right? You're a complete mixture of everything you've ever loved.
Well, hopefully, if you stick this out, this music thing, if you stick it out, pretty soon, the borders between genres dissolve. And that's where all the beauty lies, is when you get rid of situations. So it's hard for me to say it. Somebody, told me that it sounds like John Prine and Curtis Mayfield started a band together and had Lester Bowie join it. You know, okay, I'll take that. You know,
Sure.
that's really a part of it. It's just for the same reason that my soloist, Chicago's a very horn town, and horns are my thing, and I'm a horn. This is what I love to do. But I would never have somebody play like even a King Curtis style solo, because I want them to reflect the fact that we come from the age that this city was a big proponent of what's considered avant-garde spiritual jazz. In other words, the stuff that happened after Coltrane, that split, you know, at least for horns, that's where I see it. You know, jazz splits up all the time, and sometimes it goes backwards and sometimes it goes forwards. For me, my father, we had 78s of Dizzy Gillespie and that, but his most treasured ones were Lenny Tristano.
Oh, right.
You know, so I grew up with Warren Marsh, Lee Konitz, and Lenny Tristano, and thinking that. And he also told me half the guys he knew playing back then lost all their gigs if they went that route after a while, because people just didn't like it.
Okay.
You know, in terms of going back to hard bop and stuff like that, you know.
Sure.
Thing, you know, watching that jazz thing that they did on Channel 11, that serial thing, where they just kept having Louis Armstrong on it. It was driving me crazy.
Right. Yeah, they definitely, there was some controversy. They left out a few people.
Yeah. They just didn't realize that my favorite thing about music is change. My favorite thing about life. So I don't like things to stay the same.
So when you have musicians in the studio recording, let's say this most recent album, improvisation is like clearly a big part of the recording process for you. How much direction are you giving people, and how much you just say, like, go for it, do your thing?
Well, what I generally do is I make what I call maps.
Yep.
And maps are my arrangements. I don't know, but a couple tunes on there, I just hum them in my arrangement. And I love doing that. But that, time-wise, that wasn't going to happen. So my trombone player, Andy Baker, who's just a prince, an unbelievable player, and teaches jazz studies over at another college. I teach at Columbia College.
Oh, right. Okay. Yep.
University of Illinois, right across, and he teaches jazz studies. But he did all my charting for me. And I just like that really hardcore. Here I like went backwards. So my charts, I would never subject a horn player to reading my charts.
Right.
but yeah, I mean, that's a lot of it. And I always feel guilty about it in some ways. But yeah, there's tons of improvisation on this, including percussionists and stuff. And the austerity, much like the Beatles, if you Beatles really raw in the low end, but the austerity comes in the arrangement. Yep. And I kind of that thing. You need to be flying high in the rhythm section. Let the austerity happen in the arrangement, in the upper things, in the strings.
Sure. Yeah, and there's a lot of arrangement ideas that really caught my attention. Where you got the horns. Sorry, I've got the drums that are just getting, they're launching. So it's it's actually kind of exciting. I'm a little irritated, but it's exciting. It's a live gig. Oh my God. But I just, if you can still bear with me, just one more thing I wanted to ask you about. I Want to Be Your Dog, the Iggy Pop. I wanted to tell you, when I was 13, this is in Margaret River in Western Australia, the other side of the world. I was playing with these guys that were about 66, 67 years old. And that was one of the first songs I ever played in a rock band when I was rocking out. And I was so nervous, but I remember that piano part, it was just one chord. But it was the first time I really got to play with a band that was rocking, and I just sat there on that chord. So when I heard your reimagination of it, I mean, how'd you come up with that? Where did that vision come from? It's fantastic.
I sort of premiered the idea of putting it in 6/8, and at an Alejandro Escobedo gig, I was opening, and I said, "Listen, I was playing solo," and so that sat for a while, and then the way I arrange at this point is a lot of it's based, believe it or not, on what Ornette said about harmonics. When I got freed of chordal arrangement,
Hmm.
and you just add another melody and another melody, that's kind of that happened. So I
Hmm.
demoed that with samples right before the recording.
Yeah.
I kept the vocal because I had just come off COVID, and
Hmm.
the record, in a sense, it is dedicated to my son who had a month earlier.
Hmm.
So
Right.
just the arrangement came all feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, it's an absolutely magical reimagination. I'm blown away with the whole album, and very excited for the release. Um,
Yeah.
and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to chat. And this is what this interview series is all about: is talking to creative people at the top of their game, doing amazing things with music. So thank you so much, and I can't wait to plug the album and get everyone to check it out when it's out, August
Can't wait
31st.
to do a gig together. That'd be
Oh
something.
yeah, absolutely. And I'll come see you at City Winery, New York. That's going to be
Oh,
good. Looking forward to seeing you live. So thank you again, and
learn
congratulations.
Leatherman and G. Lots of
Awesome.
okay.
All right, done. All right, so thanks so much, and we'll be back next week for another episode. Thanks, and see you soon.
All right. See you. Bye bye.